and backyard, do they stay in the house?
They do not go inside the house.
Okay. So his dogs stay outside, and he said to you, according to you, dogs can stay outside in the garage and in your room.
Yes.
In April, did your dog get out of your room or into the house?
Yes.
Yes. On what date?
April 30th, because I was allowing him inside to go to my room.
On April 30th, the dog was where?
In the backyard, but I was bringing him inside to come to my room.
You were bringing him from outside to come into your room. Mm-hmm. I haven't asked him. He says in his papers that the dog was supposed to remain outside. You were bringing him inside to your room.
Yes, ma'am.
Because it is your claim here that it is an emotional support dog.
Yes, ma'am.
And you also had at least a couple of months where you left the dog in Alaska.
With
right?
people I trusted.
I don't care people who you trusted or not. If you needed an emotional support animal, the emotional support animal has to travel with you. So don't show me a certificate. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
By the way, did that certificate that you have come from a psychiatrist?
No.
No. Did it come from a psychologist?
No.
Did it come from any doctor who was treating you?
There was a doctor's note, yes.
Was a doctor who was treating you?
Yes.
Yes. Not a psychiatrist?
Not a psychiatrist, no.
Not a psychologist?
Not a psychologist.
And you took this note and you had to send it to somebody over the internet?
Yes.
And then they sent you a certificate?
Yes, and with an ID.
That's what I got. Okay, so now you're bringing the dog on April 30th from the backyard into the house, and?
He attempts to grab the dog.
No. Is the dog on a leash?
No, he's very well.
Just a sec. Is the dog on a leash?
No.
Were you holding the dog by the collar?
Yes.
And now you're taking the dog from outside to inside. What did he say to you?
No dogs in the house.
Because that's what he had said to you before. You can have your dog, but no dogs in the house. I want to tell you something. That's what I believe. So he said no dogs in the house, and you said to him,
I'm going to bring my dog into my room.
But when you asked him if you could bring the dog to the house, there is no question in my mind that he said to you, bring the dog to the house, but the dog doesn't come into the house.
He stayed in my room a few nights prior to that.
I don't
and
care.
He already
Listen to me.
approved
That's what the arrangement was, sir.
Okay.
The arrangement was not what you told me before. The arrangement was with him. Yes, you can bring the dog to the house. I will let you do that. But the dog has to stay either in the garage or outside like my dogs.
Okay.
And you said, in effect, screw you. I'm bringing my dog, and I'm bringing my dog into my room.
In effect.
You're the tenant. That was the agreement. You can have the dog, but the dog must not be in the house. That's what your landlord told you. You brought the dog from Alaska, and at the very beginning, you brought the dog into your room. Mm-hmm. When had you decided that you were going to breach the agreement with him?
The very first night I went to receive my dog, he stayed at the house inside my room with me.
So the very first night that you brought him, you decided to breach the agreement that
He
you
had knowingly said it was okay.
Did you tell him it was okay?
Never. I have texts.
I'd like to see it.
I have to scroll back.
Scroll
quite
to
a
wherever
while.
you have to scroll. Scroll
Yes.
down to the creation. I don't care. I have all day here. Nobody is hungry.
I'm a
Still
little
have
hungry.
2 more cases to do before lunch. Everybody gets a little testy, including me.
I don't have the text. I do not have the text.
Yeah, good. That's what I thought. Okay. It wasn't on the 30th that the dog got loose in the house. It was sometime before that, maybe a day or so before that. On the 30th was a day, sir, that you got locked out of the house. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh
Yes,
is
Your
not
Honor.
an answer.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. And what time of the day was it that you got locked out of the house?
2 o'clock, middle afternoon, late afternoon.
And according to what I read, you went to the back of the house to let yourself into the house, and you got into an altercation with Kathleen. Absolutely, she shouldn't have put her hands on and slapped you because you were fresh. Because you wouldn't be fresh to me, right?
Fresh?
Fresh. That's what you say to a child. Fresh. How old are you?
65.
How old are you?
25.
That's fresh.
A courthouse. The Judy Justice logo appears. In the courtroom, Armando and Samuel.
Armando Rodriguez claims his former tenant, Samuel Gastelum, is responsible for damages from an assault. Samuel says he was the one assaulted and falsely arrested.
Now, you got into an altercation with Kathleen.
Not quite, Your Honor.
Well, tell me what happened.
I had been outside, I went out the garage, and I was playing a time-sensitive game on my Xbox. So I was going back to the room, and I knocked on the garage door. No one answered. Knocked on it a few times, pounded. Then I went back around and knocked on the sliding glass door a few times, one of the few times. Finally, Kathleen comes up and answers the door. At that point, I've been out there for about 10 minutes. So I'm upset. I'm like, who locked me out? Who locked the door? She gets completely defensive. She says, it wasn't me, it wasn't me. And I'm like, I'm asking who it was, because Armando and I had discussed.
Because you're on a time-sensitive video game.
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
So you were on a time-sensitive video game.
How
old are you?
25 years old.
Okay, so now you're on a time-sensitive video game and somebody either on purpose or accidentally locked the door, and you think it's Kathleen.
No, I did not accuse anyone. I just asked was who locked me out, because I had been locked out earlier that week, again, earlier by Armando.
Just a second, did you have a key to the house?
On my...
No. Did you have...
I had a front door key, not to the garage door, not to the sliding door.
But you had a front door key.
Yes, Your Honor, but there's a gate. There's a big fence, and I didn't have a key to the gate that was locked.
You couldn't get into the house, even with your front door key?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, after you had a conversation with her, there was no physicality between the two of you?
Not at that moment. But once Armando came around the corner, he's like, it was me who locked you out. So me and him...
No, just a second. He said, it was me that locked you out. Did he say he did that on purpose, or was it...
It was an accident, is what he said.
Did he say... Okay, so he said it was me that locked you out. It was an accident.
It wasn't the first time.
It's not...
Yes, Your Honor.
That's yes. First, second, I've locked my children out of the house many times, sometimes on purpose,
I'm not his
sometimes
child.
by accident.
I'm his roommate.
It doesn't make any difference. So he said to you, it was an accident. And you said to him...
It's happened before.
And he said to you...
Those were accidents also.
Okay, and he said those were accidents also.
Yes.
And you said to him...
I said you need to be more attentive, more aware. If someone had just walked out and left the door unlocked, you should probably go and see if anyone's out there before you turn around and lock the door.
And he said?
He said he apologized.
So he said, I apologize.
Yes.
Okay, what's next?
Throwing out that whole...
You pay $600. You count the claims dismissed. We're finished.
This court is adjourned.
Outside the courtroom, Dallas, then Shanice.
I am a little upset she didn't see things my way.
The judge was kind of in my favor for the majority of it.
You know, her leaving my children in the care of her 15-year-old son and also her husband.
And why did she continue bringing her children to me for another month?
Also, my son letting me know that, you know, she hit him.
I have never touched her children. I could take a lie detector test to prove it.
It was pretty difficult for me because I didn't have any other choices. I didn't have anyone else who could help me with keeping all three of my children while I work.
She actually never gave me excuses. She actually just told me she was going to pay me.
Life is not easy.
If you work, you should get paid.
But you get back up and you keep moving.
Sarah and Judy.
My generation, I'm not sure about yours, I haven't had much experience in yours, but in mine, I think we confuse having to make a hard choice with being out of options. Here, I felt for the defendant. She had to make a hard choice.
For the cost of tools she wrongfully sold.
Court come to order. All rise.
Have a seat, please.
Kevin approaches Judge Judy.
Hello, Judge. Case 2189, Strubs versus Wassinger.
Thank you.
Judy turns to Andrew.
Mr. Scruggs, you have brothers and sisters?
No, ma'am.
Were your father and your mother? Who predeceased whom?
My mother died when I was 17 years old, and my father died in 2019 after a long-time illness, and he had his tools at my property.
You and the defendant were married for 10 years.
Correct.
You separated in what year?
2016.
And when you left, she stayed in the house.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Sometime prior to 2016, according to you, you borrowed some tools of your father's.
That's correct. I actually
Is that correct?
That is correct.
And the tools that you borrowed from your father were left in the marital home 2016, 17, 18. Your father died in 2019. You were divorced in 2000.
We were divorced in 2019 was the final judgment.
And then things sort of got away from you. So now we're in 2023, and you want your father's tools back or money for them, according to you, $10,000 worth.
Yes, ma'am.
Ridiculous. Let's start out with ridiculous. Where were you in 2019?
2019 is when my father died, and shortly after he died, I was taking care of his affairs, and we still had an ongoing court case that consisted of our minor children at the time, and I was under advisement of my attorney.
Don't tell me what your attorney advised you. It's hearsay. You did nothing with regard to the tools. In what year did you borrow the tools from your father?
It was 2013. I brought the tools over to my storage shed, and...
Mr. Scruggs, you gotta let it go. You haven't had the tools in 7 years. You've been out of the house since 2016? 2016.
What, Your Honor?
And you've been, look at you, and you've been living. Who is this?
This is my current wife.
So, you got divorced, you remarried. When did you remarry?
I got remarried in 2018.
Well, so you found time to get married, right? Just a second. That's a yes or a no.
Yes,
you found time to get married.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have a big wedding?
No, ma'am.
You had a small wedding. Do you have any children?
Yes, ma'am.
With your current wife?
Yes, ma'am.
How many?
One child.
How old?
She's 5.
So you managed to have a baby. Well, I'm suggesting to you, sir, how many different jobs did you have since 2016?
I've had 2 different employers.
Since 2016, so you also looked for another job and found another job. So let's see, you got married, you had a child, you changed jobs, but all of a sudden in 2023, the tools are important. Now, how many children did you and the defendant have?
2 children.
How old are they?
I have a 14-year-old and an 8-year-old.
You pay child support?
No, ma'am.
How come?
Because one of the children lives with me full-time.
For how long?
She's lived with me full-time for approximately 3 years.
But when you and the defendant separated, she was living with her mother.
Only for a short amount of time.
How long?
Probably about a year. And I paid support during that time.
And the other child?
Is 45-55 split.
So that's why you don't pay child support?
Correct.
And do you work?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. And at some point, so what do you want to say and why?
Just that the reason we were not able to do anything about the tools was that she had an order of protection.
The tools are stupid.
Was that she had an order of protection against him.
The tools are stupid. Orders of protection don't disqualify you from coming to small claims court.
They said that it wasn't able to.
Oh, no, what's a they? Oz? You were allowed to come for small claims court, file a petition and say, these tools belong to me. He didn't do it during the divorce. He didn't do it before your wedding. He didn't do it after your wedding. He didn't do it before your daughter was born. He didn't do it till after your daughter was born. She's now 5 years old. It's 10 years after the tools were moved from your father's house into the marital home. That would be a fair statement, 10 years. You said 2013, we're now in 2023.
Correct, and
Okay.
Your Honor, I do have here where my dad filed a police report where he was trying to recover the tools.
Well, unfortunately-
And the defendant here obviously lied to this officer here and told them that I didn't retrieve.
So what? I want you to forget $10,000, sir. It's not happening for you. Put a period. The only thing that I'm going to consider is she did, in fact, sell the tools. That she acknowledges. Now, she can't sell something that doesn't belong to her. And in what year did you sell the tools?
I sold the tools. Our divorce was signed in 2018. They had gotten married. He'd quit paying a mortgage, so I had to find a way to pay.
Just a second.
Yes, ma'am.
Can't you just tell me, in what year did you sell the tools?
It was on and off between August and October of 2018.
So you sold them piecemeal?
Yes, ma'am.
And you remember that, so you must have put an ad someplace.
I put
for
an ad on Craigslist because I needed to pay the mortgage. And I didn't only sell his tools, I sold jewelry that was mine.
I get it, but you sold it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you have an inventory about, first of all, they weren't his tools, they were his father's tools. But I've asked him whether or not he was an only child. He is an only child, so he would stand to inherit these tools unless there was another child that he doesn't know about because his mother predeceased his father. So
Your Honor, I do have an inventory from that.
I don't care. Understand this. I don't care.
Caption coming up.
How do you know it was $1,000 if you sold them over a 3 or 4 month period? And if the answer to that is I don't know, or I pulled out the number from my behind, then that's an answer. But not that I sold the tools to put food on the table for my children. That's not an answer.
And later today.
I do have a witness that I brought with me, my daughter, who actually did see.
You sure you want to do that? Are you sure you want to do that? Be very careful, Miss Vieira. Are you sure you want to put her there for me to question? Are you sure?
A courthouse. The Judy Justice logo appears. In the courtroom, Andrew and Lori.
Andrew Scruggs claims his ex-wife, Lori Watsager, wrongfully sold his father's tools and kept the money.
You let it lapse too long. Your father died 4 years ago. You and the defendant are separated for 6 years. The tools were there for 10 years. Courts don't care. We use a whole bunch of things. Statute of, give me a day.
22nd.
And you moved in alone.
Yes, ma'am.
Paid your rent on time?
Yes, ma'am.
February, paid your rent on time?
Yes, ma'am.
Lived there alone?
Yes, ma'am.
What about March?
Did I live there alone in March also? Yes, ma'am.
When did you get a dog?
I've had my dog.
No, when did you get a dog that you brought into the house?
April 22nd, 23rd.
So several months after you moved in. Is not an answer.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. And before you moved the dog in, did you have a discussion with the plaintiff?
Yes, ma'am.
Just prior to moving in with the dog. And what was the discussion that you had with the plaintiff?
That if it was okay if I were to bring my dog that I had in Alaska, since I had him since he was about 6-7 weeks.
And where had he been in the last 2 months?
He was still in Alaska, staying with close friends, and I flew to Seattle, shipped my truck and all my belongings to Seattle, and drove here. From Seattle, my dog, the person who was watching him, drove from Alaska to Montana, and I had gone to Montana to pick him up.
So you asked Mr. Rodriguez if it was okay if you brought your dog?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did he say?
Yes.
Did he say anything else?
He said, just clean
Now
up.
look at me.
He said,
Did he say anything else
clean
other
up
than...
after the dog, make sure that the dogs don't fight, and just take care of him.
Okay. Nothing about him staying out of the house?
He said he wouldn't prefer him to be around the house, but he would not. It would be okay for him to be in my room.
In your room?
The dog stayed with me in that room a few nights, and he knowingly knew about it.
No, I don't want to know what he knew. I want to know what your arrangement was. So your arrangement with him, according to you, now, I haven't asked him, but according to you, is that you asked him if you could bring your dog. He said okay for the dog to stay outside, but could stay in your room.
He said he didn't want him in the living area. My dog could also be in the garage or
in your room. And was everything okay in April when you brought the dog?
Yeah, everything was
What
fine.
about May?
May, I was looking for a new place. I was homeless because I had spent 5 days in jail.
Oh, I'm talking about before you went to jail, sir. Before you went to jail, because this case is about an assault, which is what the plaintiff is claiming. Plaintiff is claiming that you assaulted him in the home, and that took place on April 30th. That was shortly after your dog arrived.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the dog was the reason for the altercation.
A part of
because
the reason, but that's
in
how it started.
February, March, and up until April, the end of April, when the dog was there, I see no evidence here that there was any difficulty.
You're right.
Fair statement? Yeah. So that the problem arose when the dog came. Now, this woman's name is Kathleen. She's interspersed in both the complaint and the answer in this case. She had a cat. Is not an answer.
Yes, ma'am.
He had a cat. And it was a house cat.
Yes, ma'am.
Plaintiff has a dog.
A few dogs.
And they live in the house.
Yes, they stay in the garage and in the backyard, yes.
Garage and backyard, do they stay in the house?
They do not go inside that.
Okay, so his dogs stay outside, and he said to you, according to you, your dogs can stay outside in the garage and in your room.
Yes.
In April, did your dog get out of your room or into the house?
Yes.
Yes. On what date?
April 30th, because I was allowing him inside to go to my room.
On April 30th, the dog was where?
In the backyard, but I was bringing him inside to come to my room.
You were bringing him from outside to come into your room. I haven't asked him. He says in his papers that the dog was supposed to remain outside. You were bringing him inside to your room.
Yes, ma'am.
Because it is your claim here that it is an emotional support dog.
Yes, ma'am.
And you also had at least a couple of months where you left the dog in Alaska.
With
people
I trust.
I don't care people who you trust or not. If you needed an emotional support animal, the emotional support animal has to travel with you. So don't show me a certificate. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
By the way, did that certificate that you have come from a psychiatrist?
No.
No. Did it come from a psychologist?
No.
Did it come from any doctor who was treating